Hey everyone, Mike here in the BFH garage, and I got a doozy today. The owner of this 15JK gave me a call driving down the road, said that they heard a loud pop, the rear end locked up, and they were dead in the water. They had to get this thing towed home. Eventually they towed it over here, and they're looking to get it re-geared anyway, but I need to see first, is there any damage? There's a Rubicon, so it has the locker in the rear, so I'm not sure whether that sustained any damage or if it was just a ring gear issue. Don't know any of that yet. Tow truck driver brought it over. The back tires are locked up. They were able to back it into my shop, which is awesome. Kudos to the tow truck driver. But now that I finally have it up on the rack, we need to go through and systematically find a way to determine whether the locker's the issue, if it's just the gears, whatever. As you can see, the back wheels, transfer case is in neutral, and they're still locked up right there. The owner of the Jeep said he did pull off the rear diff cover and pulled out a couple small fragments of teeth. It didn't quite sound like he was certain they came from the ring gear or not, so we're gonna start figuring this stuff out. So before I pull the wheels off and everything like that, I'm just gonna go through the process of elimination to make sure it's not a transmission, transfer case, or anything like that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just disconnect the rear drive shaft, get that out of the equation. If it's still locked up, then we know for sure it's inside the differential. I'll open up the differential. We're gonna see what's inside there, and we'll clear out any obstructions, whether there's teeth in the ring gear or not. We'll get that out of the way, and if it's still locked up, then we can kind of start leaning towards the locker being the issue. So first thing I need to do is get this thing up in the air, get that rear drive shaft off, and see what happens with that. No sooner do I get this other light over here hooked up and I go to start taking apart the drive shaft, the problem is very evident. Come over here and let me show you what I'm talking about. Woo! So as we're coming under here, taking apart the drive shaft, I get ready to, and the first thing I notice, look at that pinion. You can see how everything here is just completely not where it's supposed to be. And as I take off this drive shaft, I'll come back here. My guess is this thing will just shake up and down, but this thing, something's broken for sure, and we're about ready to find out what. Okay, so it's kind of a good news, bad news type of situation here. The good news is I got the drive shaft off without issue. It spins freely in the transfer case, which is currently in neutral. So for the most part, I can rule out that the transfer case or the transmission has been damaged. However, I won't know 100% until we get it re-geared, get everything connected back up and drive it down the road. But I am fairly confident that it is not damaged. Neither one of those are damaged. Now the bad news here is that, as I showed you earlier, this pinion here is jammed up. You can see that gap there, kind of looks like a wedge, which means the pinion's going up. This thing is locked in place. It's not moving, so that's not good. And then also the wheels are still locked. So something is definitely in a bind inside this differential. The next thing we got to do, take off the diff cover, take a look inside. I'm going to leave the tires on for now because it's easier to turn the axle if I need it with those on. But once I figure out what's going on in the inside, we're tearing this all apart, getting it apart so we can get everything out of there. So this is going to be a doozy for sure. Here is suck number 2. Has nothing to do with the differential, but it has to do with this thing right here. It's got a 3-way ball connector there. It's got the drop hitch. Worst of all, it has a lock pin in it and the keys back at their house, which is over an hour away. Shoulder, head, I'm gonna get beat up today. All right, here's the moment of truth. When this thing came to me, it only had 4 bolts holding this cover on. Most of the gear oil, I'm guessing, has leaked out because a bunch of it was in my driveway, a bunch here in my shop while it sat overnight. But I have 1 bolt left here. Let's take a look and see what we get. Yep, no gear oil. How about that? Oh, man. Inside the cover, look at all the stuff up against the magnet there. That is nothing but mush. Oh, my God. Woo, this thing got beat up. Now, he said he pulled a tooth or two out, is my understanding. The problem I have right now is I don't see those teeth. This may be a locker issue that's broken, but I'm not going to find out until I get this thing out of here, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to work just yet. So before we get this thing out of here, I'm going to take a flashlight, get a real good look in there before I move anything. Now the wheels are going to have to come off, the axle shafts come out. I need to disconnect this sensor from the outside over here first, get those bearing caps off. You can see this thing got bent up pretty good there. Normally it's flat right across, so there's definitely some carnage inside here. We just don't know the extent of it yet. Wow, let's start taking things apart and take a look. Closer up look for you. Look at all of the junk in there. This thing is just horrible. Holy cow. This thing's definitely gonna have some carnage on the inside. As I stated, you can see a little bit of damage on top of the ring gear, but I don't see any teeth broken off yet. You definitely see right here where the pinion walked on the carrier or the locker, so you see those little marks right there. Hopefully the plunger didn't get damaged, hopefully the locker didn't get damaged, but you could just see how much junk is inside here as far as just goopy metallic mess. We're not going to figure out what's going on until we get everything apart. Got the axle shafts, everything apart there. Got my locker sensor wire disconnected. My bearing cap bolts are loosened. I don't even know if this thing's going to come out. We're going to find out. Now's a moment of truth. This thing got beat up pretty good, something twisted on it, so let's hope this thing's not stuck. Oh, that's good. I come undone. Keep my shims in the same spot. Good Lord, that smells burn up. Woo! Oh yeah, there's your problem. All right. Hang on, I'll show you what's going on here. Let me get my hands cleaned up. Take a look at the ring gear first. You can see right here, missing a couple corners of the teeth. You can see how everything else is just chewed up. Everything I'm looking at right now is pointing to lack of maintenance. Look at how much stuff is just stuck in here. So when you come back here and you wipe that, it is just unbelievably burnt, disgusting smell. Now when you come in here, that tooth you saw missing on the ring gear is sitting right here. That's part of a tooth right there. So that is why the axle would not rotate forward or backwards along with the other side of the pinion, because the pinion is all jammed in there sideways. Something is was either starving for oil, burned up their bearings. The only way we're going to figure this out now is to get the pinion out of there next. This thing is a mess. Before moving on, let's check the pinion to see if it's stuck or not still. Oh, look at that, it moves. You see all that movement like that? That's not good. Pinion bearing failed, something failed. This probably had a lot of movement prior to that, but you see, this thing should be turning straight. It looks like the pinion may be bent. This is going to be crazy when I take this thing off. This is not good. So this thing had to be running dry for a while. Those tapered roller bearings in there, those are friction welded to the cone. Those things don't move. I've tried prying them out with a screwdriver. Those things are completely friction welded to that cone. That's that piece you see right up next to the splines. It did move a little bit when I hammered it, so I don't think the cone is welded to the pinion itself, but because everything's so bent, it's not coming out, and I'm not sure how we're going to get this one out. I've been beating on it with the sledgehammer. It's not working. Added heat. It's not working. Looking for other options. Now, as we come over to the housing, you're going to see, let me come around to this other side. You're going to see, though, how all of the burnt gear oil, whatever was left in there. I mean, you saw how much gear oil came out when I emptied that thing. There's nothing in there. And I know he had the cover off once before, but he said there wasn't much that came out of there either. So the only thing I'm going to be able to do now is get some brake clean this thing out thoroughly as if I'm setting up gears. We're going to take a look at the seats for the races. Hopefully those aren't burned in there and not going to come out, but we'll find out. More likely not. Well, let's take a look at this housing, see if it is still salvageable. So as I'm cleaning this out, if you look in the lower galley there, you're going to see a whole bunch of pieces. Let's stick a magnet in there and see what happens. All parts of the bearings, anything else that's metallic in there that was just getting destroyed. Overall, I think I'm going to be able to use this housing though, so let's talk about that for a second. Looked at the inner races, I pulled those out, looked at the seats for those, everything else looks pretty good. So as I look at this axle as a whole, when you come over and you look at the ring gear, when you look at the locker, how everything is burnt on. That's not just, bad oil, that is burnt on. This thing was oil starved for some time. So my thought is that with it being oil starved, you're not getting oil up to the pinion bearing, the tail bearing. That in turn eventually got red hot. Everything in there started falling apart, broke one of the ring gear teeth right there, which in turn got caught in the pinion gear tooth. Everything locked up and just created this massive failure here from lack of lubrication. So if anything, take away from this video how important it is to keep your differentials filled appropriately with the correct amount of differential oil, and you'll get a good long life out of your diff. If you don't, this is what can happen. Here's another parts thing right here. So that's a tooth. That's what's left of the roller bearing cage. Just absolutely destroyed. Time for a quick locker check on this thing. I got it cleaned up. As you can see, the pinion rode along the carrier there, but I'm not sure if you guys can see this or not. I'm trying to get it to focus right inside here. You can see the spider gears turn. So I inspected the spider gears. Everything looks good, but the question is now, how do we see if it's going to lock or not? Well, with that magneto, it ends up pushing down on these, and that's what will cause us to lock. So if I spin the spider gears like this and then push down on this, you hear all of a sudden it locks, and all of a sudden it stops turning the spider gears. So as far as I can tell, everything here's in workable condition. That's good. To be honest with you, I wasn't really expecting that. I didn't know what to expect out of this, but I think this axle is salvageable. I'm going to go ahead and re-gear it to, I think they got 513s, but we're going to put it together. We truly won't know until everything is hooked up and tested out, but I'm feeling pretty confident about this now after looking at everything and looking at the inside, not seeing any broken teeth. That's a big plus.